Package number 1 is the residential sales contracts class, package 1. That's got all of the contracts in it, all of the documents that we use on the buy side. So we're going to be going through that. The package 2 is that's detailed explanations of every paragraph in the contract. The ones detailed explanations of the paragraphs that need explaining. Not some of them are pretty apparent what they are, but some of them are very detailed and need explanation. And you're gonna new folks, you're gonna write a few offers and you're not gonna know what the heck's going on, because these paragraphs have a lot of things that can come back and haunt you or your buyers. So we're gonna go over them in detail. Again, ask questions if you have. Let me share my screen. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
It says residential sales contract. Perfect. Okay, we're going to start here. This is the one we're going to go over. The package 2 is we're going to go over that. I'm going to go over that, but we're going to do it as we go over package 1, because package 2 again is detailed explanations of every paragraph. So let's get rolling here. I've got a group of preferred vendors that I use, that my team uses, and we've had extremely good luck with them over the years. We send our closings to Borders and Borders attorneys. Harry's one of the reasons that I was successful in this broker role, because I've been, if it weren't for him the first couple of years, getting a broker's license is kind of like getting a real estate license. It really doesn't teach you what the heck's going on. So sorry, I'm gonna try to make my pictures of you guys bigger while I'm here. There we go. So yeah, Harry's been a huge asset to me over the years, and so we send all of our business here. You guys, if you're on a team, you're going to use what your team person tells you to use. But if you're on your own, I would use these folks. Elaine Havens is our mortgage lady. She probably knows more about mortgages than the next 10 mortgage people put together. She can get things done that nobody else can get done. And what's really cool is her address over here is no longer her address, because Thursday they moved into the building behind us, the Freedom Ventures. So she's literally right behind our office there, so she can come over for buyer consults or whatever you need.
Hey, Brad, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm getting a very strong echo.
From me or from?
I don't know if it's my computer or you, but.
Can you guys hear me okay? Everybody else hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, must be me.
Becky, can you hear me?
Yes.
Pretty normal?
Maybe I'll turn the volume down. Maybe that's it.
Are you
I did mine as, yeah.
Are you on the app or are you on the web-based version?
I'm on the link that you sent me.
Okay, all right. Well, do the best you can. I'll try to talk clearly. I'm hearing some background noise somewhere, but that could be part of it. Anyway, Elaine will be living in the building behind us, so she will be there. I think I'm hearing myself.
There's just there's a lot of echoing going on.
Anybody else getting echoing?
There sounds like right after you speak, there sounds like a little bubbling, like someone else is speaking.
Okay, I'm gonna mute everybody temporarily. And if I can figure out how to do that. Where is my muter? Zoom. Meeting controls. Or actually, why don't you guys mute yourself, and then if you want to ask a question, you can unmute. How's that?
That's a lot better, whatever you've done.
I didn't do anything. So. Cool. All right. Got my stuff here. I hear Whitney getting on board. Okay, are we better? Thumbs up if it's better. Cool. All right, if you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself, please, and ask away, because there's a lot, if you don't understand it, I want you to have a good understanding of this thing. And then for home warranties, we use home membership. Troy does a really good job. They're a local company, which is rare in home warranty companies. But if you have a problem, you can call Troy, and he, many times they'll cover things that others won't. So I wouldn't recommend, I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to use any of these folks at all. And then the next page we're going to go, this is, there's a lot of agents out there that have very bad reputations. And it's really sad. Becky, did Lisa tell you about the horrible experience she had with that one that just closed? Nope. Okay. Well, again, you don't have, just because you sell a lot of houses, you don't have to be a jerk. You know, you want to treat people like you want to be treated. Whitney, would you say that's true? If you can hear me?
Yeah, just be a nice human. That's all you got to do.
Whitney had one of the worst experiences of anybody that I've ever had happen in the office, and this is totally crazy. But she survived, and she's still with us.
And I'm way nicer to everybody because of it.
That's right. So yeah, follow the golden rule. Treat others like you would like to be treated. Please respond quickly to inquiries and requests for information. Try to schedule your appointments as far in advance as possible. If you are, this is huge, if you're delayed or need to cancel a showing, people get their homes ready for showings. They pack their kids up, they pack their animals up, sometimes they'll even clean. And so if you don't show up, they're going to be mad, and they're going to call their agent. Their agent's going to be mad, their agent's going to call you, or sometimes call me and tell me how horrible of a person you are. So please, please, please always call and let them know if you're going to be late or if you're going to cancel. If prospective buyer decides not to view a home, explain the situation to the listing agent or to the occupant. You know, it's a good idea if you made the appointment to look at the house and then you get there and then people say, oh, this sucks. You know, maybe have the courtesy to go in and take a quick look around anyway, just to be nice. Again, because people get ready for their showings. Never criticize the property in the presence of the owner or occupant. In fact, technology is changing everything, and we are being videoed many times during showings. And if you say something that, you know, you have to be really careful what you say, because you don't know when you're on camera or when you're on audio. They're supposed to let you know, but many times they don't.
Hey, Brad, I actually have a question for you
Sure,
about
buddy.
this, because that actually came up in a recent transaction that I had. My clients had an uber amount of technology in their home, and it was disclosed and everything on the listing about cameras and what type of cameras they were and all this kind of stuff. And there were signs as you walked into the house and all of that kind of thing. And luckily, you know, I had the client that had the cameras, but the other party had no clue. And they just went through there and they said all kinds of things. The appraiser in the home have opened the,
Your internet connection is fading out,
and you know, and it
Tommy, but Earth to Tommy. All right, we've lost you, bro. Yeah, he's paralyzed. Well, you got an internet connection issue, bruh. You are You are being, stopping mid-sentence and freezing up. Sorry. Yeah, be careful with criticizing the property. When showing an occupied home, always ring the doorbell or knock, because you never know who's in there. I've shown what I thought were vacant homes only to walk in and find people in there doing certain things. So whether you're showing an occupied home or a vacant home, always knock or ring the doorbell before you enter, because you don't know what's going on. I was in the basement, had a confirmed appointment to show a house one day, and I was in the basement with the potential buyers. A guy came to the top of the stairs with a shotgun, asking me why I was in his house, and I'm like, his agent never told him that we had an appointment. So that was a little bit of a tense situation. So always knock, ring the doorbell, announce your presence. Yeah, don't use the bathroom or telephone. The telephone's not really realistic anymore. This was written back in the day of pre-cell phones. But if on an occupied home or if the sellers are there, ask their permission before you use the bathroom. Be aware of and meet all deadlines. Promise only what you can deliver and keep your promises. And very important here, don't tell people what you think. Tell them what you know, because you're not a home inspector. At least I don't think you are. You're not an appraiser. You're not, I mean, you don't have probably as much knowledge about the house so just if they ask you, tell them, you know what, I don't know, but I'll see if I can find out. Don't make up something, because it may be wrong and it could get you in trouble. You are responsible for everybody that enters the listed property, and that includes kids. Kids can go crazy when showing homes. So you got to keep these people herded together. And especially now with this Corona thing going on, I don't think you need to let your buyers know it may not be the best idea to bring the kids in the house, because they're going to be touching everything. And it's just, I'm not sure if that's a good situation. So try to keep right now, try to keep the number of people you allow in a house to a minimum. Never allow a buyer to enter a property with unaccompanied. You can lose your membership rights to GLAR for that. Again, keep your people together. Keep your people together. Enter a property only with permission, even if you have the lockbox key or the combination. And leave the house how you found it. Your buyers may open doors like in the basement and things, and you may be with one buyer and the other buyer may be in the basement. And I've had a situation where a basement door was left open last fall because the agent didn't check to verify that all the doors were locked up before they left. And it got really windy. It got rainy. All these leaves blew into the finished basement. It was really nasty. But you have to check behind your buyers to make sure everything's locked before you leave the house. You guys can read this. The stuff I highlighted is kind of what I think is really important stuff. You should read all the rest of it. Again, respond to agents' calls, faxes, and emails promptly. If there's inaccurate information or appears to be, let the listing agent know so they can correct it before they get a violation. Show trust, courtesy, respect to other real estate professionals. That's huge. That'll pay you such big dividends down the road. Never prospect at other realtors' open houses or similar events. I've had that happen to me. That's not cool. Had an agent in the basement trying to convert people that were in an open house that I was doing. They came up and told me about it. I kindly asked the guy to get lost and called his broker the next day. Return keys promptly. Get in the habit of figuring out what you're going to do with keys. I had a situation once. I showed a house in LaGrange. I live in St. Matthews. Showed a house in LaGrange. Got all the way home at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I got a call from the listing agent. And apparently, I forgot to put the key back in the Supra, and sure enough, it was in my pocket. And so I had to, I don't know if anybody has driven on I-71 between 4 and 7 o'clock. It's not, that road is kind of a pain, right, Becky? So yeah, it was like an hour-and-a-half round trip to return that key. So kind of get in the habit of, get a method to keep track of your keys. Again, put them back in the lockbox. To be successful in the business, mutual respect is essential. Your reputation will follow you around for the rest of your career. So be aware of that. We've got some people in town that have some really bad reputations, and I don't want you all to be one of them. I want you to be the people that they want to work with. There's true story. Sorry, Brittany is borrowing my truck, so I have to tell her a combination to get in my house. Okay, this class, residential sales contract, I used to call it How to Save $100,000 Over Your Real Estate Career. I've spent I'm up to probably about 130,000 now of money that I wasted because I made mistakes, deals that didn't close because of things that we did. It adds up very quickly. Robin and I just bought a set of patio, or a play set in the backyard for $1,000 because the buyer wanted it and we didn't put it in the contract. So again, I want to save you guys this $100,000 or more so that you don't lose it. I've lost enough for all of us put together. So I'm going to teach you ways not to lose money. It's very important you understand the contract, all of its paragraphs implicitly. Here's a big thing. You've got to realize that many agents have not had any training on the contract and don't understand it. So if you guys have questions, call me, text me, email me, please, because I would rather have you. Whitney, am I pretty available when you need me?
Brad, you're the most available person ever. You've never not answered my text or phone call, and I've needed you probably about 1,000 times.
Well, probably not 1,000, but thank you.
Pretty close. No,
Yeah,
you're awesome. You're
I
always.
try to be there for you guys because it's critical, because there's just people have questions. Luckily, I don't have kids. I don't have anything much going on. So I'm here. My life is you guys. So.
No, you're awesome. We all appreciate
I
it.
can say that I have interrupted his dinner many, many times, and he's always been nice about it.
Many times I will talk to one of you guys while I'm eating dinner. So anyway.
I think I'm one of those people, so thank you.
What's that?
I'm pretty sure I'm one of those people, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. The very first thing on this top of this contract, it says this is a legally binding contract. Unfortunately, I don't know if buyers in today's current world that we live in, they rush to put offers in on properties because somebody on my team, I can't remember who it was up against 10 offers on a property. So people are having to make decisions quickly. They're not having time to think about it. They're changing their mind. Well, this contract doesn't allow you to change your mind. There are ways to get out of it, but there are legal ways, things you have to do, certain steps you have to do to get out of the contract. So please tell your people up front. Now, if you're not 100% sure about this, you can't change your mind tomorrow. We're going to have to go through an inspection process. You're going to have to spend some money in order to get out of this contract legally. So let them know that up front so they don't have the buyer's remorse and just tell you the next day that they want out. Because we have some very upset sellers that have gone after buyers because they changed their mind. No verbal agreements are allowed in real estate. No verbal agreements or understandings of any kind shall be binding upon any party. That's enumerated 3 different times in the contract. That's how important it is. Back in the old days, you would have agents say, "Hey, let's just work this out verbally before we go through the hassle of writing up this offer." Can't do that. It's a path to disaster, because as soon as you work something out verbally, that then another offer is going to come in on top of yours, and the listing agent is obligated to present that offer to her seller, and the seller can accept that offer, even though the listing agent's told you that they're going to accept your offer. So please don't allow that to happen. I've had agents call me in tears over that because it's happened to them, and it's no fun. So until you have something assigned, the 7 pages of this contract, or 8 pages or 9 pages, how many ever addendums you have to go through, until somebody clicks the accepted button and signs it and returns it to you, you do not have an accepted contract. So please be aware of that. Never tell your buyers they bought a house until you have that contract back in hand. Calculating days. All days are calendar days, midnight to midnight. Weekends, there's no such thing as weekends in real estate. There are exceptions to this, but very few. All days are calendar days, midnight to midnight. Calculated beginning on the first day following the acceptance day, or if applicable, notification day. So what that means is today is the 20th. Becky gets a contract accepted today, the 20th. All the countdowns, all the timelines in the contract start tomorrow. Does that make sense? That one there has cost me thousands and thousands of dollars, not just myself, but people on my team that have missed inspection deadlines. It can get really, really expensive. So if you miss an inspection deadline and there's $5,000 worth of repairs that are needed, well, guess who's paying for those repairs? And it's really not a lot of fun to work for free. It's hard enough to get somebody under contract, only to end up working for free because you missed your inspection deadline. We're going to go over this calendar and how you do this so that you will have a full and clear understanding of it. Again, it's legally binding. Explain the ramifications of default. They can and do get sued all the time for defaulting. If a buyer goes under contract at $200,000, you have a buyer goes under contract for $200,000. The buyer changes his mind the next day, then he just defaults. Then that seller can come after him. Then they put the house back on the market. The house sells for $195 the next time. There's a $5,000 variance there. That buyer could be liable for the $5,000 difference in the contract price, along with the commissions. The other agent can go after the commissions, because commissions are earned upon acceptance. So if a buyer breaches, the commissions have already been earned. So again, it's a big deal. Explain the ramifications. Give a copy of the sales contract to your buyers early in the process. Encourage them to read over it and highlight any questions. It's 7 pages, and there's a lot of things in there. Many times we'll send this over electronically late at night or whatever, and don't have the time to explain every paragraph. So give them a copy early on and let them read through it. At least they will have seen it before they have to start signing. There's hard dates in the contract and soft dates. A hard date is one that when that date and time comes and something doesn't happen, then the deal is dead, or whatever you're dealing with is dead. Whereas there's soft dates in the contract. Paragraphs that have this time is of the essence attached to them, that means if something doesn't happen regarding that paragraph and that date and time comes, it's over. One of those is the inspection paragraph. Another one is the contingency contract. Soft dates are like closing dates. Let's say you've got today is 4/20. Oh, today is 4/20. Wow, interesting. So today is 4/20, and you're supposed to close today. And for whatever reason, something's not ready to close. Is the deal dead? No. That's a soft date. The closing date is a soft date, which means that both parties are working toward the closing, and today the 20th comes and it doesn't close, the contract is still alive. You can still progress toward closing. So please understand that. Any questions so far? I guess we lost Tommy. Okay, the next document here is an exclusive buyer's agency agreement. It's you list your sale when you list your home for sale. That listing agreement guarantees that you're going to get paid if the house sells. Well, we have a lot of buyer's agents. In fact, probably the majority of buyer's agents that will take people out and show them 50 or 100 homes. Hopefully, not that many, without listing them. And then they walk. There's Tommy. You're back. So list your buyers. That way, if they can go to an open house with, you may have shown them 50 houses, but without a buyer's agency agreement, they could walk into an open house and buy it and totally cut you out of the deal. And this agreement explains all of the things what you're going to do up the top here and what the buyer is going to do. And if you explain these things, it's going to make for a much better relationship. Just let them know, hey, if you go to an open house, give them a stack of your business cards when you first meet with them. If you go to an open house, give the agent working the open house my card. Let them know you're working with me, because you need representation. You need somebody to protect your interest. It's hard to be a dual agent and be fair to both sides, in my opinion. So go over this agreement and try to get them to sign it. Okay, if you guys sell or show any house that is not on our MLS is, let me show you our MLS for those brand new folks. Can you guys see that? Is that showing up, the MLS over here? Yes. Okay, cool. This is what an MLS report looks like. The things you want to look at. Well, see, this one's pending, so it's already sold, so that's important. But you want to look down here at the bottom, co-op commission. That's how much you're going to get paid if the house closes. 3% is fairly standard. There are agents that offer less than that. I think that sucks. At Keller Williams, when we list a house, we have to offer a minimum of 3%. So that's where you're going to see how much you're going to get paid. But if you're a member of our MLS, this will protect your compensation. But if you're showing a property, let's say it's a for sale by owner or any off-market property, they're under no obligation to pay you any commission unless you get this one-time showing agreement signed, stating that they're going to pay you a sum equal to whatever you put in here. And you're going to put in here the price that they are asking for the house. That doesn't mean the price that's going to ultimately sell for. That's if they say they want $250 out of it, you're just going to write $250 in here. That doesn't mean you're going to offer $250. That just means that's what they think they're getting for it. And then the sum equal to 3% would go right here, and this next to sum equal to, put the 3%, blah, 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 shall be made at close, said payment shall be made at closing of this transaction. Seller's disclosures are required by Kentucky law. A for sale by owner may or may not have a seller's disclosure. If they don't, you're okay. It's okay for you to give them one to fill out prior to your buyers writing the offer. In fact, you should. And you also should give them the Consumer's Guide to Agency Relationship, Consumer's Guide to Agency Relationships. That explains how we work. Should also give them the Fair Housing Brochure, blah, blah, blah. So you're allowed to give them certain things. And then down here is how long you're protected if the sale, if you show your buyer the house and then the buyer goes back the following week and buys it without you, you have protection right here. I usually put 90 days in this box. So if that protects you for 90 days if your buyer goes back to this FSBO and buys it without you. Any questions? But you have to get this signed. You have to get this signed before you show the house. Because if you don't get it signed, you could be out your commission. So any questions about that? Nope. All right. This is an example of the MLS sheet, we're using this one as an example for our contract that we're going to prepare. Those of you that printed it out, if you want to pull this out separately so you can refer to it. Let me see if I can do that real quick here. Extract pages. Yes. Perfect. Okay. The things you want to look for, you want the MLS number, you're going to need that to write your offer. This is the listing price. And those of you that are new in the business, this listing agent, who I have no idea who it is, listed this house for $199,900. How do people buy houses today? Did they pick up the Courier Journal and look at the real estate section? No, they haven't done that in years. They go to realtor.com, they go to Zillow, hopefully they go to my website a lot, which they do. And so this listing agent has made this listing invisible to anyone searching from $200,000 to $225,000 or $50,000. You don't price houses off at $199,900 in today's world, because you're going to miss out on 40% of the potential buyers, because searches are set up in increments of even dollar amounts. So please be aware of that if you're a listing agent. If you're a buyer's agent, go down under whatever they're looking. So say they're looking from 2 to 250. When you're setting up a search, go down below. So you'll pull up these. Somebody looking for a $200,000 house would probably be interested in a house that was listed at $199,900. So set your searches up to pull those houses in that these agents list at off, so that they sound like they're cheaper. I used to be in the women's shoe business. We would price shoes $99.99 because it sounded cheaper than $100. Like, well, we're not selling shoes here, folks. Down at the bottom here, you need the deed. You'll need to know the deed book and the page, the block, the lot, and the sublot. And down here, this is critical importance, where it says agent notes right here. Read that before you read anything. Because agents will tell you things you need to know. Like, for instance, our listings on my team. I've never seen most of these homes, but if you'll notice the agent's name right here, my number is going to come up right here at the top. But in the agent notes, it says, for all information about this property, please call Lisa, George, Robin, whoever the heck it is. Because they call me and I just have to tell them, hey, can you call Robin or Lisa or whoever has it listed? Because I've never seen the house. I don't know anything about it. So read the agent notes. It'll make you look like a smarter agent. Because trust me, they know when you don't read the agent notes. In fact, read the agent notes before you read this up here. Sold as is. That's huge. You've got an FHA buyer. FHA appraisers may require repairs to be made. This one's sold as is, so they may not be willing to do any repairs. There's no sign on the property. The agent's related to the seller, blah, blah, blah. And then the listing company, which you'll need to write the offer, and the agent's name, which you'll need to write the offer. This is an example of our Jefferson County PVA for this property. When you write, if you'll notice something about this house, the big address right here, 2907 Waldoa Beach Road, that's the physical address of this house over here. But if you notice, the mailing address is different. So that tells you something. The owners of this house don't live in it or may not live in it. So you need to find out, is it a rental property? What's the story? Because if it's got a lease, if it has a lease in effect, then that, and you have buyers that need to move in immediately. If the lease goes through December or whatever, they may not be able to move in until the end of December, in which case they've just bought an investment property. So ask questions when you see that. The parcel ID right here, 00100840000. That parcel ID, when you divide that in 3 sections, becomes the block, the lot, and the sublot. So right here, see where it says, can you guys see on the right-hand side? Are you seeing my whole screen? Right here, block 0010 is right here, lot 0084 right here, and sublot is 0000, which means it doesn't have a sublot. So that's where you find the block, the lot, and the sublot. The parcel ID is the legal description of the property. So then the deed book and the page right here that I have highlighted, that goes right here down on this part of the MLS printout. And that changes every time a house sells or gets refinanced. The deed is re-recorded at the courthouse, so it'll generate a new deed book and a page. So you got to make sure that the agent gets it right, because many times they'll copy a listing and they'll have the old deed book and the page on there. You want to make sure that the correct one is on there. Then there's more information down here regarding the house. What you can look through all that. New folks, you Google Jefferson County PVA, and the user ID is KWLOU East. That's the username and the password. KWLOU EAST. Username and password. Go on the PVA and play around with it, because it's got a ton of information. And it shows you the sales history of the house right here. It sold for $150 on 4/22/19. It shows the assessment history, which, keep in mind that the assessed value has no relevance to the market value. That's just the tax base of the property. Then it shows you the lot. In this case, it shows you that the lot is 31 feet wide by 284 feet deep, and it's north of River Road. So play around on the PVA. It's got good information in there. All righty, we are into the residential sales contract. What's it say at the very top? This is a legally binding contract, so they cannot change their mind. It also says in here that there's no verbal agreements that are allowed. At the very top right here, you're going to write the date, today's date, the date you write the offer, and then the MLS number, which is up here on the top of the MLS sheet. The date you write up here, that is the offer date. That it may get accepted today, March or April 20th, or it may get accepted tomorrow, or it may get accepted 2 or 3 days later, depending on how many times you go back and forth. This is a date you refer to until it becomes a contract. Once it becomes a contract, you're going to refer to it as the contract dated, and that's going to be the date where all parties signed off on it and it became an actual contract. Okay. Pull up my notes here so I can see what I'm doing. Okay. Calculating days. We talked about this. All days are calendar days, midnight to midnight, calculated beginning on the first day following the acceptance, or if applicable, notification day. So what that means is, let's say you get the offer is accepted and somebody clicks accepted and signs off on it at 11 o'clock tonight. Okay, but the agent doesn't deliver it back to you until tomorrow sometime. So that means notification day is the day you receive it. It's not that necessarily the date it was signed. Does that make sense? That's what it says it right up here. The first day following acceptance day, or if applicable, notification day. So today's the 20th. It gets accepted and signed up on today, but they don't give it back to you until tomorrow, the 21st. That means the 22nd is day one of all the countdowns in the contract. Everybody clear on that? Let me check something here. I thought I had a calendar somewhere in here. Did I miss that? I missed the most important page. We're going to go back to this right here. I don't know how I skipped over that, because this is the most important thing in the whole class. This is a calendar, as you can see. And what this does, I've got it, and it's not obviously not this year. I made this July of 2018, but we're going to pretend like it's July of 2018. So we write an offer here. Becky writes an offer here, gives it to Brandy. Brandy counter offers here, and Becky counter offers again here, and then Brandy's people accept it here. So we started here on the 3rd, and the acceptance day was the 6th. And in this case, the 6th was the day that Brandy delivered it back to Becky. So that is the acceptance date and the contract date. Make sense? Which means day 1 of all of the timelines start on this day, the Saturday, which is day 1. And in our scenario, don't know what I did there. In our scenario, we're using this as an example for the repair request. So a 10-day inspection period is pretty typical. So what we do, Saturday's day 1, and then keeps going, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9, day 10. Midnight on day 10 is the drop dead date. And the time is of the essence regarding the inspection paragraph. So what you want to do is on day 7, you want to set some kind of reminder in Google Calendar or whatever you use to remind you that you've got to, if you haven't done your inspections, you better get on it, because you've got to either send over a repair request or send over a termination by midnight on day 10. If you don't, if you wait till the 17th, then you've just cost yourself a lot of money, maybe, depending on the amount of the repairs necessary. So be very, very careful. Never miss this date. Never, ever miss this date. Before Google Calendar, I used to print these out just like you see here. I'd print them out for every month, and then I'd write when a house went under contract, I would literally put all these days in here and then circle day 10 and put it in my file. Because back then I kept paper manila folders of everything. So I would, every morning I would check through those files, because if you've got 10 or more contracts going at once, which is not unusual, it's very hard to keep track of all these dates. So you've got to do something. Robin on my team had 14 going at once a few weeks ago. Remember that, Becky? Juggling all those dates is very, very tough. So you've got to come up with a system where you'll remember to do that. So Google Calendar, setting reminders is great. That's the way I do it now. But just do something, because you don't want to miss that date. So is everybody crystal clear on what that means? Everybody else? Can you guys see me at all, or can you just see my screen? Cool. All right. So we're going to move past the calendar, go back to the contract. But again, this is critical stuff here, so I want you to understand it. People text me when I'm teaching. Okay, so we calculated days on the calendar. Next, right here, we have where the listing. This is where the listing information down here at the bottom. This is the listing company. This is the agent's name. They're both their license numbers and their telephone numbers that you find down here on the MLS. And then this is your information here. Keller Williams Louisville East. That's our office license number. That's my name. And that's not my license number. That's my GLAR number. I'm not sure why that's on there. I screwed up. But that's the number you'll need to know. And then you need to write down your KREC license number, because you're going to need to use it for contracts and also for when you take classes at GLAR. Then put the telephone number where you want them to be able to find you, and then your email address right here. So that's where all that goes. Now we're 45 minutes in, and we're finally getting to paragraph 1 of this offer. So what we're going to do here is, if you'll notice, like those of you that printed both of these out, the package number 2 has paragraph 1. And it has a whole bunch of information down there. Okay, so that is for you to reference down the road, so you'll understand these paragraphs implicitly. We're going to go over it, but this is for your records. to get when you may need to, when you're writing an offer at 10 o'clock at night and I'm asleep or something like that. So what you're going to do up here is put the full address of the property along with the deed book and the page, which you're going to verify on the PVA, and then the block, the lot, and the sublot, which the agents typically have down here. But like I said, you should always verify these things so that they're accurate. Okay. If there's more than one parcel, this is critical. If there's a house here and it says on the MLS that the vacant lot next door transfers with this house, you need to make sure that you put both addresses up here. If the vacant lot doesn't have an address yet, then put the parcel ID, which you can find on the PVA. All right, see this map right here? Whoops. See this map on the PVA? Every time this is clickable. Every time you click on one of these lots, it's going to pull up the information about that property. So if this house is what you're selling and this happens to be a vacant lot, make sure to go to the PVA and click. In this case, it has an address. So this would include 4310 Alton Road and also 4308 Alton Road. So make sure that you put both addresses, because if you don't put both in here and it gets to closing, then your people have bought this property, but the seller has no obligation to sell the lot or to transfer the lot because you didn't write it in the contract. Doesn't matter that it's said in the MLS that the lot next door goes with it. It must be in, if it's not in the contract, it doesn't exist. So if that were the case, then the seller could sell this lot, then stick a for sale sign in his vacant lot and sell that, and your people didn't get what they thought they were getting. So this can be a very expensive lesson to learn. You don't have to use, if you're you can sell. Katie No in our office sold, no, it was either Katie or Teresa Wallace, one of them, I can't remember. They sold 10 properties with one sales contract. You don't need a separate sales contract for every single property. What she did is she wrote an addendum and listed the addresses and the parcel ID of every property. And then right here, she just wrote, see properties listed on addendum number 1. Because there may not be room to write all of that right here. So you may have to do an addendum stating which properties transfer. Any questions about that? Nope. Okay. Now, all of these things right here are fixtures that remain with the property per the contract. You've got to, if you're representing a seller, you need to let them know that all these things stay with the house. The contract includes them. If they're planning on taking something down, they need to probably remove it before you list it, or put in the agent notes and in the contract that the chandelier in the dining room does not remain. If they don't do that, then it remains because it says so right here. And then if you're asking for appliances on line 31, the things you're allowed to ask for and get away with, lenders, we're selling real property here. Lenders go nuts if they see, oh yeah, the bedroom furniture or the patio furniture remains with the house. We sell real property, not personal property. So if there's anything besides what typically goes with the house, which is a refrigerator, a stove, range, dishwasher, and microwave, anything beyond that, you're gonna do what's called a bill of sale. And we'll get in, there's one of these in your handout, and it's not an addendum because you don't want the lender to see that. It just states that upon closing of this property, seller agrees to leave for the valuable consideration of $1, the bedroom furniture or the patio furniture or whatever the case may be. So you're going to use that bill of sale, and you're going to have that separate from the contract docs, and it's just an agreement between your buyer and your seller. So notice this X right here. It says refrigerators, refrigerator, and then it has in parentheses S. Everybody see that? That means if there's a refrigerator in the kitchen, it stays. If there's a refrigerator in the basement, it stays. If there's a refrigerator in the garage, it stays. If there's 10 refrigerators like Nancy Pelosi has, then they all stay. Anybody see her $24,000 refrigerator? Wow, that's pretty cool. Just Google it. And her $12 a pint ice cream. Anyway, just a little aside there. So right here, this means that every refrigerator that's in the house or on the property stays, along with all the stoves and ranges, all the dishwasher, and all the microwaves. Okay, but if they've got really nice Nancy Pelosi style appliances, you probably want to be fairly specific so that they don't take, because if it just says refrigerator, they could take their $24,000 refrigerator out and put in a dorm, $100 dorm fridge in there. So if it's really nice stuff, what you need to do is specify what it is here, or take pictures of it. I mean, we've got our cameras with us 24/7 now. Just take pictures of the appliances that stay. Say appliances that were in place the day of showing. And then
That's
have those
happened to me
pictures.
before, and I've had to buy a refrigerator.
I'm sorry, who's talking?
Whitney, that's
Hi, Whitney.
happened to me before, and I have bought a refrigerator.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I bought many refrigerators. I bought many ranges. I bought many stoves.
Yeah.
It's no fun.
No.
At all. So yeah, be very, very specific here. And again, the listing agents, many agents don't even know that this little X here or S here remains. This has only been in the contract the last 2 years. Prior to that, it just said refrigerator. They added the little S's 2 years ago. And I'd say half of the agents in our board of realtors don't even understand what it means. So you're going to have to explain in many cases to the listing agent, hey, you guys accepted this. That means all of the refrigerators and ranges remain. We had this happen just last month. They took the refrigerator that was in the garage. Well, nope, it stays. So, and then it says on line 34, seller shall remove the following fixtures prior to delivery of possession. A pool table is not a fixture, but it is something that people like to leave because they weigh about 20,000 pounds. So if there's something you want to make sure they take with them, write it in here. Or if there's a fixture that you don't want, write it in here. One of the big things that people do, you guys know what a Gorilla goal is? I had an Amy Leo vision for a moment. Hi, Amy Leo vision.
Hi,
Are you on the Star Trek Enterprise or what?
I am. I'm out of this world.
Starship Enterprise, that I should say. That's pretty cool. Gorilla goals. Does anybody have one? Nope. They cost about $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000. You get them at Stapleton's. Then they have to be installed. They pour a concrete pad, about 2 by 2 foot by 2 foot concrete pad with bolts sticking out of them. And then they bolt this goal onto that pad. Well, guess what? That $3,000 basketball goal has just become a fixture of the property. Okay. So the sellers are not allowed to take that. Now they take them all the time. The Oatleys had one removed. It was a reload deal. It took us 6 months to get that Gorilla goal replaced. Actually, they ended up giving money. They didn't replace it. But you need to make sure you inform the sellers that, hey, these items stay. And the best thing to do, if there's any ambiguity whatsoever, write it in here. Gorilla goal to remain. But keep in mind, the draperies don't stay. The rods stay, but not the draperies. They're free to take the draperies down, but they're supposed to leave the rods and the television mounts and brackets. They can take the TVs down, but they're supposed to leave the mounts and the brackets. We have people taking them off, taking them out, leaving holes in the wall all the time. I don't know why they do that, but they do it. And so just kind of, again, educate the listing agent of what your expectations are. One other thing, Line 36, propane. Does anybody have propane at their house? Okay, I don't either. But propane, I pay LG&E every month for how much gas and electric I use. With a propane tank, you pay for that propane prior to using it. So in October, November, you may have a truck come out and fill up your propane tank with $1,000 worth of juice or whatever that stuff is. Gas, I don't even know what it is. But so that's $1,000 that the seller probably wants compensation on. So you need to talk about that. What I want you to do is try to avoid problems early in the process as opposed to them becoming problems the day before closing. Because usually what happens is people hope for the best. They don't plan for, should always plan for the worst, but people plan for the best and it doesn't happen. Then I get a call, hey, these people want $1,000. What am I supposed to do? I said, well, you should have talked about it 3 weeks ago or a month ago when you went under contract. I mean, work these things out in the beginning so that you don't have a disaster the day or the week of closing. Unfortunately, that's what happens in many, many cases. So just be aware of that. Again, if you guys have questions, unmute yourself and ask, please, because there's a lot of stuff we're going to go over here. Newer folks, Kimberly, are you there? Yes. Brandy, you guys don't know what the hell we're talking about because neither one of you have written anything yet. So just know that at least now you're going to have at least you will have heard of it before. Now, a couple of months from now, you're probably going to come back and take this class again after you've written a few offers so that Becky, would you say that's a good thing to do?
Yes, I took this class 2 months ago and really soaked it all in. But until you sit down and write these contracts, you really don't know the questions to ask.
Yeah. So just know there's a lot to learn, and you're not going to learn it the first week or the first month or in many cases the first year. So just please feel free to come back as often as you like. We don't charge for this. It's free, right, Amy?
That's right.
I want you to teach me how to have a Starship Enterprise background sometime.
Call me after this. I got you.
Okay, cool. All right. That concludes paragraph number 1. Only 30 more to go. All right. Paragraph 2 is a simple one. It's one line. It's the purchase price. That's where you're going to write in how much you're offering for the property. Okay. That doesn't mean that's what it's going to sell for, but that's how much you're offering for the property. In this case, we're offering $200,000. Earnest money deposit is a check that the buyer writes. And in our case, we always have our buyers write it payable to the escrow account of Keller Williams Louisville East. We want control of that good faith money. So on page 2, we're going to write in here Keller Williams Louisville East. And I'll explain what that means here momentarily. But keep this good faith money $2,500 or under, right, Whitney? Because
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Yeah, make sure it's under, I think it's under 2,000 actually.
small claims court, the limit is 2,500.
20,000.
So if you keep it 2,500 or under, and you have a belligerent seller like Whitney had that won't release the good faith money, then
Yeah.
you can go to small claims court and get it released right away, and as opposed to having to wait 60 days like Whitney's people had to do. Was it 10,000 bucks?
5,000.
5,000, yeah. They had to wait turned into like 80 days before they got their $5,000 back because we had a jerk agent and a jerk seller and a jerk seller's father.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah.
So limit that to 2,500. That way, if you have a bad seller or an agent that doesn't understand the contract, you can take it to small claims. Paragraph 3. This is how you're going to pay for the house. It says payment of purchase price. Purchase price shall be paid as follows. Now this is confusing as hell. because nowhere in here does it say down payment anywhere. I'm gonna mute you, Whitney. Oh, she muted herself. Thanks. So 43 and 44 can mean two things. That could mean if they're paying cash for this house, instead of financing it, you would check right here, line 43, and put $198,000 right here on line 43 in the blank, because the 200,000 less $2,000 good faith money leaves a balance of 198 that they're paying cash for. Well, they're not paying cash in our scenario. They're doing financing. So the line 43 becomes the down payment line. So in this case, we're putting 20% down. For those of you that are newer or haven't bought a house, 20% is typically how much you have to put down to avoid mortgage insurance. So that's what we're putting here, 20%. If this 20% is going to follow this contract price, if it sells for more or less than this, they're still going to put 20%. So that's why I don't put anything right here. If they're planning on putting 20% down, 5%, 3.5%, again, you've got to get with your lender and understand and know what kind of loan product they're going to use, so you'll know what to put in here. So in this case, 20%, and that'll stay 20% no matter what the final sales price becomes. Or it could be they're using an equity line. They're taking money out of their existing house to buy this new house. In that case, you would put this equity. You would check the X next to line 44. Or if it's a gift from mom and dad, you put that here. Or if it's down payment assistance, say it's a USDA loan or a KHC loan where there's down payment assistance, you want to be clear and let the other agent know that the lender is the buyer doesn't have the cash, it's coming from another source. So you put that right here as well. Never put cash for anything unless the cash is sitting in a bank account that can be, it literally has to be liquid enough to be provided the next day. You see people all the time saying, oh, well, my parents are going to give me cash, so I'll have the cash when it comes to closing. Well, no, you won't. Not necessarily. True story. I sold it 15 years ago. I'd only been in the business for a year or so. A friend of mine was buying a house and his dad was going to give him the down payment, the 20% down. We found him a cute little Cape Cod in St. Matthews. We got under contract, did all the inspections, did everything. Well, 2 weeks before closing, little Johnny got a DUI. Y'all know what that is? That means he got arrested for drinking under the influence. Well, guess where that 20% down payment went? It went right out the window. Well, dumbass Brad put cash here instead of gift from parents. I could have been in big trouble because I committed fraud by saying that he had cash and he didn't have cash. It was a gift. Okay, you learn things in this business. I've learned a lot in this business. So again, unless that cash is in Johnny's account, it's not cash, it's daddy's cash. So the best thing to do on a gift line, on a gift situation, number one, every lender is different on how gift funds are handled. So get with your lender and say, hey, the parents are going to put down the down payment. How do you want to handle that? Okay, because different lenders have different requirements. The best thing to do, if daddy or mommy are giving them down payment amount, have them give that money to them before you even write up the offer. So it's sitting in their account. Okay, does that make sense? That way, if they get a DUI, they can still buy the house because it's in their account. Okay.
So you're talking, do you have a question?
Yep.
You're talking to the lender then always before writing the contract.
Yes, for two reasons. One, you want to make sure the people that you're showing houses to can actually buy the house, because people will run you ragged that have no ability whatsoever to purchase a home. I don't know whether they just are bored and want to look at houses that they can't buy or what. But Becky, have you found that not to be true in your experience the last couple of months?
Oh, gosh, yes. The hardest thing is getting them to actually call a lender and get themselves pre-approved. But I've just taken the policy that unless you have that pre-approval or you're getting it from a lender I know, then I'm not taking you to look at houses.
No, it's a waste of time. And especially now with what's going on, I'm hoping we go back to work soon or the economy opens up soon. But we talked to our lender this morning at our little team get together, and say a server, for instance. Like I have a lot of friends that worked at restaurants and bars that are unemployed right now. But if they reopen these restaurants and these people go back to work, all the lenders are going to require is one pay stub because they've gotten their job back. They're not going to hold the last, how many ever, 2 months, 6 weeks, whatever this shutdown lasts. They're not going to hold that against them. So that's good. So yeah, get them pre-approved for that reason to make sure they can buy a house. And number two, when you're writing the offer, if they're not pre-approved, you have no idea whether they're conventional, FHA, VA, USDA. There's a million different types of loan products out there. So you want to make sure you know what to write.
And Brad, we learned from my mistake that you really have to question the lender as well. Lenders have a lot of people they're working with.
Yes.
So when you're right there and you're talking to the lender before you write that contract and you say, so the down payment is this much, that's cash, right? He has that cash. So they're not doing a KHC or something else and they've forgotten to tell you about it.
Yeah, because you question the lender. Use paragraph 3 as your questionnaire for the lender. That's the way I explained it to Becky after this situation, because the lenders, they're working with a bunch of different people. They may not be exactly clear. So just make sure to just ask all of these questions. Every question that you see here, ask the lender. So in our case, this is a conventional loan product with 20% down, cash. They have the cash in the bank. It's not tied up in their house. Let's say they're selling their house and you've got their house listed and it's under contract and you're using the proceeds of their house for the down payment, the 20% down payment. In that case, you would click other here and you would write proceeds from sale of home. Because again, it'll be cash when it closes, but it's not cash right now. This is a snapshot in time. So you want to make sure you put what it is right this moment. Okay, is that pretty clear? Financing, the remaining amount shall be financed. Choose all that apply. In our case, conventional, fixed rate. It's not an adjustable. Try to get in the habit of putting NAs in lines that don't have anything so that things don't accidentally get written in there by mistake. It's a 30-year loan product with interest rate not to exceed 4%. Again, don't just put a random number in here because this 4% is a contract contingency. It says interest rate not to exceed 4%. If these people are borderline qualifying and something happens in final underwriting and the loan gets bumped up to 4.5%, that could potentially put them out of the affordability of this house. So that number needs to be a legitimate number that you put in there. Again, talk to the lender and find out what that number is. In this case, it's not an adjustable rate, so we're putting it NA right here. Now, something very, very important. It says if financing other than equity line is involved, this contract's contingent upon the buyer qualifying for a loan with the above financing terms and conditions or better. If buyer has acted in good faith and does not qualify for the loan, buyer may void the contract and receive earnest money back. That's why if he's acted in good faith and he can't get this loan at 4%, he will get it. The contract will return his earnest money to him. But it goes on to say, and this is huge here, and this is fairly new as of 2 years ago. The acquisition by buyer of earnest money deposit, cash, equity line, gift, and or other source of funds noted on lines 39, 41, and 42, it's not a contingency. So if they say that they've got the earnest money, $2,000, and they don't, that's not a contract contingency. If they say they have the cash for the down payment and they don't, it's not a contract contingency. Here's where this happened not too long ago. People were going to use the proceeds of their house, the sale of their house, for the 20% down payment. So that was what was written here. Proceeds from sale of house. Well, when they sold their house, guess what? It didn't sell for as much as they thought it was going to sell for. So therefore, they didn't have the 20% down. Well, sorry, Charlie, that's not a contingency. You say you have it, you have it. So you're going to have to come up with the difference. Even though your house sold for less than you thought it would, you're going to have to come up with the difference because it's not a contingency. And make sure your people understand this, because they're not going to read this. They're not going to read this contract and understand it like you guys do. That's not going to happen. It's up to you to explain it. And then it says that the buyer must apply for said loan within blank days. We put 3 days right here. Failure to apply for loan shall constitute a breach of this contract, in which case, let's say you put 3 here, and on day 4, the listing agent calls the lender that's listed on the next page, and the lender says, no, I haven't gotten that loan application from this guy. Well, guess what? Your buyer's in breach of contract. You got to make sure they do what they say they're going to do in here. In which case, the seller can grant a written extension of time for the buyer to apply for the loan, void the contract, and keep the good faith deposit as liquidated damages. Okay, that's huge. Or pursue a claim for damages as a result of the breach of contract. So these things that you put in here have consequences to your buyers. And here's what you must know. Any change in financing terms or lender must not adversely affect the seller's proceeds or the closing date. Seller shall be informed of the progress of the loan, including any change to the above financing terms or selected lender. So if your buyer says they're doing a conventional, and then all of a sudden they change to a VA, well, guess what? They can't. Because the VA is going to adversely affect the seller's proceeds. Because on page 2, right here, if it's a VA loan, the VA loans require that the seller pay for the termite inspection. So that's adversely affecting the seller's proceeds. Also, VA loans take longer to close than conventional loans. So it may affect the closing date. So make sure your buyers, these buyers, they can be a little loosey-goosey. They don't do what they say they're going to do. They don't provide the documents on time to the lenders. It's crazy. So they cannot. We've had buyers that changed their lenders 2 or 3 weeks into the contract and didn't tell us. Of course,
the contract can then be void, and they have to give up the earnest money.
Well, it depends. It's if it affects their closing or the proceeds of the closing date. Yes, the seller can terminate it and keep the good faith money. If they can get permission. If your buyer says conventional like we did, and then he wants to change to an FHA, and it doesn't affect the closing date or proceeds, which FHA may or may not. You have to keep the listing agent informed of everything that's going on.
Sure.
Okay? But if you're going to change it and it's going to adversely affect the closing date, you got to get the seller's permission before you can do that. If you just change lenders on day 2 and it's not going to affect anything, then the only thing you have to do is notify the listing agent that you changed the lender. That's the lender you used. You ended up using is not the lender that they ended up going with. So you use seller shall be informed of the progress of the loan. When it says seller shall be informed, that means the listing agent shall be informed, because you're not going to call the seller yourself. You're going to call the listing agent, keep them informed. So any questions about what we've done so far?
Brad, you said not to go over 2,500 for the earnest money, but how do you know what amount?
Well, it 2,500, again, that's just, I say that simply because that's the max for small claims court. Earnest money is, I see 500, houses itself are under $100,000. I see $500 all the time. Houses between 100 and 200, I see $1,000 good faith money is pretty typical for a house up to, you know, 200,000 or 300,000 or whatever.
Okay.
Again, that the earnest money is just showing the seller that your buyer is acting in good faith, and that they're risking that money if they do something wrong.
Okay.
So,
But there's no formula for how much they need to give.
no, it used to be 1% was typical, but that's kind of gone away. So what's typical now is $500, $1,000, $2,000, $2,500, and I've seen more. It depends. Again, I just, after Whitney's debacle, I've just tried to encourage people to keep it $2,500 or under, so you don't have to wait 60 to 80 days to get it back.
Okay.
So, all righty. Anything else before we go to the next paragraph? It's actually the same paragraph. So this is where you put the lender's name and contact information, and that gives permission for the listing agent to contact the lender and find out what's going on. So you guys make sure what's going on. Make sure you know what's going on, because many agents will call that lender and find out what's going on. And if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, you're going to hear about it. If it's a VA loan, this is where you're going to put in $60 or $75, whatever. I don't know how much what are termite inspections? 60, 75 bucks, something like that.
My last one was 75.
75. I usually put 75 in there. That'll usually cover most termite inspections. And then line 66 through 71, that is a hold harmless for you guys. What that means, if a seller or a buyer tells you something, it proves to be not true, that's taking the liability off of you. You are not required to, I mean, if it's a cash buyer, you need to get proof that they have the cash. But if they tell you something, if they tell you something and it proves not to be the case, this is holding you harmless. So that's all that means there. Paragraph 4, this is where the earnest money is going to live until closing or termination. Again, we always want to try to hold it in our escrow account. When we do that, we have control over it. In Whitney's case, she had a belligerent seller, would not sign the termination and release. So what we had to do, and this was $5,000, we had to issue what's called a 60-day letter. And that letter gets sent certified mail to the seller and to the listing agent saying, if you don't do one of these things within 60 days, we're going to release the $5,000 back to the buyer. And those things are sign a termination, file a lawsuit, whatever. They have 60 days to do that stuff. Other than that, by law, I'm not allowed to release good faith money unless both buyers and sellers and both brokers sign off on the termination and release. That's the only legal way I can release good faith money back to either party. So find my paragraph here. There we go. Where's my paragraph? There we go. Again, that earnest money must be delivered within 3 days of acceptance. And in 3 days, back to our calendar at the beginning, that 3 days, the acceptance date is not included. So the 3 days counts, that would be after the 3 days period starts the day after acceptance or delivery, whichever happens later, okay? If you don't deliver it, it's a breach of contract. Okay, again, this next section, failure to deliver earnest money within the aforementioned time period shall constitute a breach of contract, in which case seller may either, similar thing, grant a written extension of time, void the contract, or pursue a claim of damages. So typically, whenever something happens, there's usually 3 options that the seller has. If you have a seller or a buyer that refuses, usually the seller is the one that gets mad and refuses to sign the termination. In the event that legal action is necessary as a result of them refusing to sign the release of earnest money, the prevailing party shall be entitled to recover, in addition to any other remedies available under the contract, the earnest money deposit and mediation, arbitration, or court cost, reasonable attorney's fees required to obtain the recovery of said deposit, not to exceed 3 times the deposit amount. So if Whitney's people, Whitney had a $5,000 escrow deposit. If we did a 60-day letter, had they gone to mediation or arbitration or court to get that return, that seller had exposed $15,000 exposure. So if you represent a seller, let them know. If they take you to, they terminated this contract for a valid reason. If you refuse to sign this termination and release, they can come after you and you can lose up to 3 times the deposit amount. So encourage your people, if people terminate for a valid reason, always encourage your party you represent to sign the termination and release, because it can get ugly. But sellers get mad because they don't think that buyers acted in good faith. Many times the buyers don't act in good faith. I wish Tommy was still on here. He had a buyer that didn't act in good faith. They changed their whole damn thing they were doing, and then now the seller's going after them. I mean, it's crazy. You got to do what you're going to say you're going to do in this contract, and you have to advise your buyers that they have to do what they say they're going to do. Okay, here's a new one that's come up in the last few years. There's certain brokerages out there that don't have physical offices. So they're going to ask you to hold the good faith deposit in a title company's escrow account. Don't do that. Escrow companies are not held to the same legal, they're not real estate brokers. I'm held to the laws of the Kentucky laws regarding what real estate brokers are allowed to do. Title companies are not. So if this title company happens to do a lot of business with this agent that's asking you to hold the good faith money in their escrow account, they may decide to arbitrarily release it to the other side, which they could do. Because again, so do not do that. Always never hold it in a title company's escrow account. Hold it in ours. If someone stops payment on a good faith check or the good faith check bounces, that's a breach of contract. They can be held liable for that. You should encourage your buyers, always have their checkbook with them when you're showing them houses, because you need to get that good faith money right away, because you've only got 3 days to get it. And these buyers will drag their feet on getting it to you. And so try to encourage them to have their checkbook with them, or write out a check for $1,000 to the escrow account of Keller Williams Louisville East and have them give that to you, and just put it in your file and deposit it when they go under contract. So it's very, very important. Okay. Any questions? Nope. The appraisal contingency. This is Whitney's favorite one. Whitney, unmute yourself.
Hello.
Whitney, I love it when you come to class, because real true life stories get to be reaffirmed by the person that they affected.
Oh.
So you're my favorite appraisal story for the next 100 years. So Whitney went under contract for $375,000, was it?
Yeah.
And the appraisal came back at what, 315?
309.
309. So it was the contract price was $375,000. It appraised at 309. What is that? That's $66,000 difference. Is my math right on that? That's crazy. But it was probably an accurate appraisal. So if there is a lender involved in the transaction, there will be an appraisal, no ifs, ands, or buts, because appraisals are required by lenders. Can't get around that. And it says the lender's first appraiser. So if it doesn't appraise the first time, you can't go out and hire another appraiser to do it. You can get the first appraiser to change their opinion, but you can't go out and hire another appraiser. And the property must appraise equal to or greater than the purchase price, that whatever that turns out to be. In our scenario, $200,000. So if you're putting $40,000 down, which is 20%, a lot of agents will ask me, well, they're putting down $40,000, so that's, you know, it appraised for 190, so that's fine. No, it's not fine. It says right here, it must appraise for equal to or greater than the purchase price. So if it's a cash transaction, appraisals are optional. So it's either B or C. They can still do an appraisal if it's a cash transaction, or they can waive the appraisal. If you waive the appraisal, you're going to have a stronger offer, but there is certain risk involved. Whitney, I'm going to mute you just briefly there. Okay, but you need, if it's contingent on an appraisal, you need to call some appraisers and find out how soon they can get there, because you've got a blank line there that says you're going to do an appraisal within blank days right here. And if you don't want to put 5 days in there or 10 days in there or whatever, if you can't find an appraiser to do it that quickly, because appraisals take time. They have to go out and visit the house, and they have to complete the appraisal and get it back to you. So it can be a while. So make sure you contact some appraisers. Have appraisers in your back pocket if you need them. We have an appraiser in our back pocket that we can call all the time, which we do call him all the time. So those are the options for appraisals. Okay, should the appraisal establish that the value of the property is less than the purchase price, in order for the contingencies in A or B to be effective, buyer must, within 5 days of discovering the appraised value and in writing, either waive the appraisal contingency, which means in Whitney's case, they would have had to have brought $66,000 in cash on top of their down payment. I just unmuted you, Whitney.
Oh, yeah.
And here's what Whitney tried to do, and she tried to do it on day 1 or 2.
Day
They
one.
agreed to pay what, $230 or $330?
They
like
agreed to come up 15,000.
Okay, so they were willing to go. They were willing to bring the purchase price was $375. It appraised at $309. So they agreed to buy it for $320. What, $324?
Yeah, 324.
Yeah, which the seller said, no, there's no way. This is a bogus appraisal, blah, blah, blah. We're going to sue the appraiser. The father was an attorney, or a retired attorney or something. He was a total jerk. So, and the agent was a total jerk and treated Whitney like horribly.
Yeah.
So we tried to do B, agree on a new purchase price, but they would not agree to that. So Whitney did C. After that, she sent over the termination on day 3. Okay, and at which case the buyer shall, I'm gonna mute you again real quicker there. In which case the buyer shall receive earnest money in refund. Okay, but you got to do these things within 5 days. And this is on you guys to know this, because the buyer is not going to know this 5 days. 5 days is in the contract. So as soon as you find out the appraisal came in low, you got to get on the phone and start making some decisions, because something has to be done within 5 days. If not, then you're in deep doo-doo. So any questions about that? It's a big one.
Will notify you that the appraisal has come in low.
That again, like we use Elaine, right?
Mhm.
Elaine is going to, if it comes in low, she's going to notify you right away.
And so it's 5 days from the date she notifies me.
5 days from notification.
Okay.
Okay. So
Check in with your buyer, though, because sometimes lenders don't tell you and it doesn't appraise. They send the report to the buyer, and then
Yep.
the buyer doesn't know what to do with it. So you got to keep kind of checking in with them.
yep.
Got it.
That's why you should have a good relationship with the lender. When your buyers go rogue and use Fifth Third Bank or whoever they use, we had Fifth Third didn't notify a buyer. We had appraisal come in low. Fifth Third sat on the appraisal for 2 weeks before they notified the buyer that it didn't appraise. So that's the kind of lenders you don't want to use. If you use a good lender, they're gonna keep you in the loop on everything. So Anywho, any questions about appraisals? Okay. Paragraph 6 is just talks about prorations. You've got property taxes, you've got HOA or condo dues, things like that. All those things are going to be prorated for the portion of the year that the people own the house. So if you close on June 30th or July 1st, it's basically going to be half, and it's going to be split down the middle. Seller will pay for half the year, the buyer will pay for the other half of the year. Home warranty. We always ask for a home warranty. They're not. You've got to read the home warranty and coach your buyers how to call the home warranty companies, because the way they ask for a repair from the home warranty company may determine whether or not the warranty will cover that repair. So what you should coach your buyers to say when they call a home warranty company, the home warranty company is going to try to trick them, and they're going to say, well, when did it work? And what will happen is, well, we bought the house in February, so we never turned on the air conditioner until May. So it didn't work. Well, guess what? They're not going to cover that. They're going to call that a pre-existing condition. So what you want to coach your buyers to say to the home warranty company is, oh, it worked fine yesterday. We turned it on today and it quit working. That's what you coach them. That's what you coach your buyers to say. And I had a home warranty rep that came to one of our team meetings and told us that. This came from a home warranty rep on how to talk to their people and make sure stuff gets covered. Again, we use home membership, and their home warranties are $550. So you put seller agrees to pay $550 toward the home warranty, and ordered by the buyer. Okay. Or they waive a home warranty. Sometimes you waive a home warranty, or the buyer can buy a home warranty on their own. But make sure you let your buyers know that they can buy a home warranty on their own, because an agent got sued because he didn't inform the buyer that they could buy their own home warranty when the seller refused to buy it. So make sure they know they can buy it on their own. And it says on the bottom of all these paragraphs, the terms of this paragraph shall survive the closing and delivery of deed. Okay. This limit of seller's liability for this breach shall be the cost of the warranty as provided in this paragraph. What that means is, if the closing attorney somehow misses the $550, if they miss that and they don't pay it, then that survives the closing. The closing attorney can go back and get that $550 and pay the home warranty. Pay the home warranty. It's probably going to be a mess, but that does survive closing. A lot of these paragraphs survive closing. The next paragraph we have is paragraph 8, the seller's disclosure. That goes on to the next page here. So let me pull up the MLS here. When you pull up an MLS report, you're going to look under documents right here, and that's where you're going to find the pertinent information. Seller's disclosure. Kimberly, have you gotten your GLAR access yet? Okay. Randy, you don't have it yet, but this is where you'll find it when you get it. Seller's disclosure, lead paint disclosure, because the property was built before 1978. In this case, they had an Aqualock repair receipt. I guess they had some basement waterproofing done. So you want to make sure to look under documents and grab everything there, because the seller's disclosure you're going to need to have signed when you submit the offer. So in this case, the seller's disclosure was uploaded to the MLS. So you're going to check A, buyer acknowledges receipt from seller of the seller's disclosure. And they've looked it over and they're okay with everything that they see there. Okay. If for some reason the seller does not, I mean, there's many times when the sellers do not upload it here, or the agents do not upload it. So if that happens, they have 3 days to provide it to your buyer, and then your buyer has 1 day to review it. So if your buyer reviews it, after he gets it, he can terminate the contract because something was on the disclosure that he or she didn't like. So it's a good idea if you're a listing agent to get that uploaded at the time of the listing. You're required to upload it within 3 days or else you can get fined from GLAR. So any questions about that? And keep in mind, the seller's disclosure, just because the seller filled out the seller's disclosure, it doesn't mean that what they put on there is accurate. Sellers lie on seller's disclosures all the time. 60 to 70% of the lawsuits that I have friends that are litigation attorneys that sue sellers and sue buyers and stuff, 60 to 70% of their cases are due to issues that were not disclosed on the seller's disclosure. So know that what they're looking at, and let them know that what they're looking at may or may not be true. Okay. And if you're at a house and you have a copy, when I show houses, I always have a copy of the MLS printout, which is right here. I always print out the seller's disclosure, any other documents that are pertinent. I'll have them with me at the time of the showing, because they may say, I wonder how old the roof is. And then on page 2 of the seller's disclosure, I think it's page 2, they just changed the seller's disclosure. It says age of roof. And what you're going to say, if the seller puts on there that it's 2 years old, you're not going to say to your buyer that the roof is 2 years old. If they say on there that the HVAC system is 5 years old, you're not going to say the HVAC system is 5 years old. You're going to say the seller indicates that the roof is 2 years old. The seller indicates that the HVAC system is 2 years old. Because if you say it's what you are potentially getting yourself into a major liability there, because they can come back and say, well, you told me it was 2 years old. So you don't ever want to say anything that you don't know. That gets back to what we talked about early on. The only thing you need to, if it's not verifiable, then you say, I don't know. They say it's 2 years old. I don't really know. But you don't know. I hear a fly buzzing around. Anybody watch Breaking Bad? I've been binge watching that during this crisis. And remember the episode about the fly? I watched that last night. That was a crazy episode. Anyway, I don't know where that came from, but because I heard a fly buzzing around somebody's speaker. So anyway, I'm totally forgot where we are. Are we on the we're on the disclosure, right? Okay. Lead paint, if the property was built prior to 1978, it will have a lead paint disclosure uploaded to the MLS, which looks like this. Okay. You will get that signed. You'll get it initialed all 3 spots here, and then your buyer either has received the 10-day opportunity to inspect it or waived the opportunity to inspect it. Okay. They initial all 3 of these and check one of these, and then they sign it here. And guess what? You get to sign this one too. There's only a few places on this offers that you guys get to sign, and if there's a lead paint form, that's one of the places you get to sign. So maybe it's a weed eater. Anybody here a weed eater? Maybe it's you guys are all muted, so it must be coming from my backyard. Anyway, so it was either built before 78 or it wasn't built before 78. Lead paint, there's a lead paint disclosure, which we're required to give our buyers. It talks about lead paint hazards. It's called Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. You can email it to your buyers, or it's in all of the packages, all of the buyer packs that our team, on our team that we have, and also that the office has in the printer room there. So make sure they understand the dangers of lead paint. And it's particularly dangerous to young children, because if they eat the lead paint chips, that can cause lead poisoning. So they either do a lead paint inspection or they don't do a lead paint inspection. That's up to them. But you have to let them know that it can be an issue. All right. Paragraph 10, the inspections of property. This probably 90% of the terminations and releases that I sign are because the inspections came back bad. I sign anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 terminations a day within our office. And I bet you 90% of them are because the inspections came back bad. People don't take care of their houses. You get the inspection report back, you find out there's 3 feet of water in the crawl space. I mean, just crazy stuff, or there's mold in the crawl space, or, you know, the roofs and whatever. There's so many things. People don't take care of their houses. So buyers get that inspection report back and they freak out. Right, Becky? So anyway, it's a huge issue. And notice on line 146, it says time is of the essence with regard to all of paragraph 10. Paragraph 10 is a time is of the essence paragraph. So the calendar that we did at the very beginning, that calendar applies specifically to paragraph 10, although it applies to other things too, in that days start after the date of the notification, day 1. So time is of the essence to everything in paragraph 10. The first part of paragraph 10 is verification of square footage. If your buyer is concerned that the house is not as big as it's, can you guys see this right here? What I just highlighted over here? Can you see that right there? That's where the listing agent indicates that the size of the house is 1,831 square feet with 506 square feet that's unfinished UF. Listing agents are allowed a 10% mistake rate. If it's over 10%, then the buyer can terminate the contract or renegotiate the price. But the buyer has 15 days to verify that square footage is correct or off by more than 10%. Okay. Most people could care less about the square footage because you walk in a house and it either fits their needs or it doesn't. So if it's 10% off, they may or may not even care. But if they care, they've got 15 days to verify it. If it's a little ranch, they're super easy to measure. You can go out there and measure it yourself. You just place a piece of you get a 100-foot measuring device, stretch it across the front of the house, stretch it across the side of the house, multiply the two together, and you have the size of the house. But if it's a house out in Lake Forest or wherever that's got all these crazy dormers and roof lines and stuff like that, and 2-story great rooms and all that, those are a lot harder to measure. So you might need an appraiser to measure one of those. We have an appraiser that we use that can get out there usually within a day or two if we need something measured. So, but again, you want to make sure that it's done within 15 days if it's a concern to your buyer. You can write in paragraph 28 that the appraiser will verify that the square footage is within 10% of what's stated in the MLS. Okay. But again, the contract says 15 days, but if you can't get an appraiser out there with 15 days, you can put it in the paragraph 28 that the appraiser will verify that. Any questions about that before we move on to the big deal, the big inspection? Okay, you're going to hear me refer to paragraph 10B2 a lot because 10B2 is the one that, and if you look at your package number 2 on paragraph 10B2, you'll see that I've broken that down into chunks that are understandable, because the way they have all this written and it's all jumbled together up in this section right here, and unless you read it very, very carefully, you won't understand what it says. You won't know what your buyer's rights are. So I've blown it apart for you on your package number 2 handout. And typically on inspection, on 10B2, when I'm writing an offer, I will do a 10-day inspection window, followed by a 2-day response from the seller window, followed by a 2-day response from the buyer window, and then a 1-day response on line 184, which is the last, best, and final paragraph when we get to that. So let's start at the beginning. Within 10 days, buyer may inspect the property for any purpose and at reasonable times and at buyer's expense. It is a weed eater. Somebody's weed eating in my neighborhood. Within the same inspection period, shall in writing accept the property in its current condition, or if buyer has hired a licensed inspector or licensed professional and received a completed report, either void the contract. This is your buyer's get out of jail. If they have buyer's remorse, this is their get out of jail free card. They do an inspection, they get a completed report, they have the full option of voiding the contract at that point. Okay. If they do that, they get out of jail free. There's no lawsuits allowed. The sellers are required to sign a termination, and that's the way they get out of jail free. But you need to tell them up front that that's really the only way that they're going to get out of jail free, unless their financing is denied. And if that's the case, then you've got to get a denial of credit letter from the lender, and lenders can't provide that if it's not true. So a lender's not going to commit fraud so your buyer can get out of a contract. So you need to tell them that inspections are the way that they can get out of contracts. Sorry. Or if they don't void the contract, they can request the seller to make repairs, corrections, or replacements and or pay for the same. So they can ask the seller to do the repairs, or they can ask for an amount of money to cover a dollar amount to cover the repairs. Okay, seller shall respond in writing within blank days of buyer's request. If seller does not agree with buyer's request following seller's response, each party shall then respond in writing within 2 days until either. Okay, everything goes back and forth for 2 days. Okay, but here's what you must know. Today is the 20th, right? So you get a repair request today. The day 1 of the 2 days starts tomorrow. Gets back to the calendar thing we looked at early on. All days are calendar days, beginning the day after whatever happens. So if the seller does not agree with buyer's request, following seller's response, each party shall then respond in writing within 2 days until either all parties agree what's going to happen, either party responds with a counter offer indicating last, best, and final response. Okay, that's where the 1 comes in down here. If someone issues a last, best, and final response regarding repairs, the other side has, whoa, my Zoom went away. Are you guys still there?
We can still see you.
That's weird. My box went away. Oh, wow. Crazy. Oh, here. No, it's just way over. It got pushed to the side somehow. Need you guys back. Don't hide on me. Okay. Let's say you go back and forth, initial repair request, seller says, no, they're not going to do this. They'll do this, but not this. And you keep going back and forth until you get tired of going back and forth. At that point, you're going to do a last, best, and final request regarding repairs. And that if they don't do that, if they don't agree to that, then you can terminate. Until somebody does the last, best, and final, you can't terminate. You got to keep going back and forth. Unless the seller does not respond to buyer's request at any time. if the seller does not respond. So over here, within 10 days, you have submitted your repair request. 2 days comes and the seller does not respond to you, they just go silent. At that point, you can terminate the contract because the seller didn't respond to your request. So just know that. If the seller does not respond to the request, buyer may either grant a written extension of time, accept the property in its as-is condition, or void the contract. It's 3 options. It typically is 3 options on these things. So does that make sense so far? If you have a
Yes,
buyer,
and does that essentially extend that 10-day due diligence while you're countering back and forth on the repairs?
yeah, the 10 days only applies to when the initial repair request is due to be presented to the seller. It doesn't have to be 10 days. It can be, many times we'll do the inspections on day 2 or 3. You may send over the repair request on day 4, which means the 10 goes away. Now you start doing 2s and 2s.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make
So
sense?
if you send a repair request and the seller says, no, we're not doing anything, your buyer, even though it's past that 10-day, you've gone past that 10-day, he still can terminate.
No. If the buyer says, if the 10 days is the 10 days only applies to you and your buyer. It has nothing to do with the seller. That's when you have to either terminate the contract, accept it as is, or ask for repairs. If you ask for repairs and the seller comes back and says they're not going to do anything, then you have to come back and say, well, the buyer will settle for it. The seller has to do this. This is our last, best, and final response regarding repairs. Then if they don't do it, then you can terminate.
Gotcha.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But if the seller doesn't respond at all, the buyer can do one of those 3 things. Again, Harry recommends that you always do a full home inspection, or at least hire an inspector that provides a report. If your buyer defaults on you, a lot of agents try to play nice and call the other side and say, hey, my buyer changed their mind. Do you want to go ahead and put it back on the market, or do you want me to do a home inspection so we can get out of it? Well, by doing that, by telling you've telegraphed your buyer's intention to the listing agent. Okay, many sellers and many lawyers will consider that the buyer's not acting in good faith. Okay, they've already said they don't want the house. So your best bet is to do a home inspection, even if it's a simple. Some home inspectors will go out for like $150 and do just a in and out, real quick one. Put something in writing, and you can terminate. But it's just not a good idea, because many sellers will refuse to release the earnest money if you do that. If you telegraph that they're having buyer's remorse. So that's just my recommendation, but I see it happening all the time. Something that you need to be aware of: there are big repairs and there are small repairs. At the end of our thing here, we have a sample repair request, which is mostly small repairs. But if you have a repair request, if you have a repair request where the seller's agreeing to put on new shingles or agreeing to put in a new HVAC system, that is something that requires some additional language be put in there. Okay, if you have your little package, your package number 2, it says, I'm not sure, I need to page number these things, but anyway, it says really, really, really important. Okay, shingles. Does anybody put shingles on their house besides me? Shingles have a 20-year warranty, a 30-year warranty, a 40-year warranty, or whatever the warranty is, that the shingles are warranted by the manufacturer for that period of time. Okay, that's a manufacturer's warranty. If your seller hires Billy Bob's Roofing Company, and they come out and they just put those things on there and they do a horrible job. And then you close. Well, guess what? Billy Bob's Roofing Company has no obligation to your buyer to come back and fix that, because your buyer is not a party to that contract between the roofing company and the seller. Does that make sense? Same with HVAC systems. Any big ticket item that carries a manufacturer's warranty, but also requires the installation of a tradesperson. So what you're going to put in the repair request for something like that, a roof, HVAC, or anything big, you're going to put, and I put the language in package number 2, any repairs must be completed in a good and workmanlike manner by a licensed, if applicable, party that will agree in writing that the buyer is a third-party beneficiary to the contract between said party and the seller. Said writing shall be provided to the buyer 3 days prior to closing. Okay, by signing off on that, and you have put them on notice that you want your buyer to be a third-party beneficiary. And you need to make sure that your buyer, that tradesperson puts your buyer down on the receipt so that they have recourse if something's done. I've seen, there's so many shoddy roofing jobs out there, you wouldn't believe it. We have storms and these roofers roll into town from all over America, and half of them don't even know what they're doing. They just start knocking on doors, and then they're gone. They're gone. Of course, you should never hire a roofer like that anyway. You should always hire a local roofer. But this language must be put in there if the seller's hiring the roofing company, it's going to be done prior to closing. It's called privity of contract. And there's a further example in your thing that you guys can read to give you a different example on it. I'm not going to read it because you guys are adults and can read it yourself. If a buyer says they don't need an inspection, I've given you language that says the buyer hereby acknowledges that he or she has been advised by his or her real estate agent named to obtain a whole house inspection or whatever the heck it is. Buyer hereby waives his or her right to such inspection against the advice of his or her real estate agent or broker, and agrees to hold harmless the real estate agents or brokers involved in this transaction for any repairs or defects that could have been discovered by such an inspection. Okay, so it's a good idea. If somebody just says they don't want an inspection, it's a good idea to have them sign something like that. That way there's no, they're holding you harmless. You have no liability if things come up, and trust me, things come up all the time. Almost every house that sells, something comes up after closing. So that could have been or should have been discovered during a home inspection. If your house is in a HOA, if there's an HOA involved in the neighborhood of the house you're selling, it's a really good idea to have the HOA addendum sent over with the offer, because if you have a buyer, let's say your buyer is a plumber and he drives a plumbing truck to and from work every day, many neighborhoods will have restrictions against commercial vehicles being parked in the driveway or in the yard. And if that commercial vehicle will not fit in the garage, it could affect the buyer's enjoyment of the property. So that could be something you would need to know. If they want to park a boat next to their house, many HOAs don't allow boats or RVs to be parked on the house or by the house. So again, these are things you need to find out early on, so that it may not be the right neighborhood for them if that's something they absolutely must do. And there is a copy of the HOA addendum in our materials. So cool. Any inspections are such a pain in the ass, and they cause problems all the time. Any questions before we go on to surveys? Just know most of your deals that fall apart will fall apart because of inspections. And we teach you how to write really nice, easily digestible repair requests. Some agents write really crappy repair requests. Some agents send over the entire inspection report to the listing agent and say, just do everything that's on the summary. Lazy agents out there. You've spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours showing these people houses, and then you spend 5 minutes sending over a crappy repair request. Well, guess what? When that seller sees that list of 30 items that they're going to repair, they're going to freak out and they're going to say no. And now you're going to have to put that buyer back in your car and spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours showing them other houses. You're going to get in multiple offer situations. You're going to lose the house, blah, blah, blah. So spend an hour, 2 hours putting together a really nice repair request with pictures showing exactly what you want done, broken down by the individual trades, if applicable. And there is a copy in your materials that we'll go over here shortly. So spend the time putting together a nice repair request. You will terminate fewer contracts, and it just makes your life easier. All right. Next is the survey. If your people are, paragraph 11, if your people are going to build a fence, if your people are going to put in a swimming pool, anything like that, or if you go to the PBA or Logic, which Kimberly, I think you remember we showed the encroachments last week. Kimberly?
Yes.
We in the listings class, when you go to the Logic or PVA, I'll show you real quick. And you look at a house, and then you look at the lines over here. If it looks like maybe the garage is sitting on the neighbor's property, that's probably something you would want to know before you bought the house. So that's what surveys do. They'll come out and they'll put a stake on each corner of the house showing exactly where your property lines are. They'll also find out if there's any easements that go through the backyard, that maybe there's a gas line going through the backyard that means they couldn't build a swimming pool.
Right.
But they want a swimming pool. So again, you need to recommend these surveys if they're going to do something like that. 40% of the surveys done in Jefferson County, according to Harry, come back with issues, but probably less than 2% of the buyers do surveys when they purchase a home. So the reason is because it gets expensive to buy a house. When you, let me fast forward here real quick. Okay, right here. Inspection recommendation form. The home inspection right here, that's going to be between $350 and $550 or more. Stake survey, if they do that on a 1/4 acre lot in Jefferson County, it's going to be between $350 and $400.
Wow.
I had a buyer do one on 8.5 acres out off of Johnson Road, and it cost her $2,800. So stake surveys, the cost depends on the property. So now we're at $550 plus $350, $900. Wood destroying insect report, $75. So we're at $975. Septic inspections. Septic system, I'd say half of the septic inspections we do come back with problems. How much are septic inspections? Anywhere from $300 to $500. So now we're up to almost $1,500. Radon test. Radon's it's a big issue around here. Radon test is anywhere between $100 and $150. So we're up to $1,650 so far if the people do all the inspections that they really should do. But they don't. But your job is not to force people to do, you can't force somebody to do something, but you have to take the liability off of yourself and put it onto them. We had a gentleman and his wife that bought, you guys know Beachdale Road where they built the mall out there on the way to Shelbyville? Well, if you go right and go down that road, there's a bunch of houses that sit on 5-acre lots, really nice houses. Well, we sold one in there, and it was like $400,000. I can't remember, I can't remember what it was, maybe more. But we told him he needed to do a septic inspection. The septic inspection was $500. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to spend that $500. The house was only 6 years old. He goes, they've only lived here 6 years. The house is brand new. Surely the septic system's fine. And we're like, well, you don't know what the heck's underground because you can't see underground. So he did end up doing a septic inspection, cost him $500. Well, guess what? When this buyer built the house, 6 months after they built the house, they decided to have an irrigation system put in their yard so their grass would be nice and green. Well, the irrigation company, when they put in the irrigation system, severed 3 out of the 4 lateral lines, because in this case, the septic system was put in the front and the side of the house, so the backyard could be used for a swimming pool or whatever. The irrigation company severed 3 out of the 4 lateral lines. It was a $20,000 fix that the seller had to pay for. You think that buyer was happy that we recommended the septic inspection? Yes, very happy. So again, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You want to take the liability off of yourself, put it back on them. If you're going to do a survey, you don't want to just put a random date or number of days in here, because there's probably 1,000 home inspectors in town, but there's probably only about 10 surveyors in town, if that. So if they need a survey, you need to find out, you need to call your surveyor of choice.
I've lost audio.
What's that?
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Yep. Kimberly, can you hear me? Everybody that can hear me, do a thumbs up. Brandy? Okay, sorry, your thumb blended into your cabinetry. Kimberly,
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I've lost audio. I can't hear you.
I don't know what you must have hit. You probably hit mute over on the far left side of your control panel. Maybe. Because I haven't done anything. Anybody a Zoom expert that can help her out?
Can you hear me, Kimberly?
I don't think she can hear anybody. Let me see if I can text her, chat with her. Are you back, Kimberly? Hey, Brandy, will you tell her just to, can you chat with her real quick, Brandy? You're a better typer than me. Just tell her to go ahead and log off the call and just come back in, maybe log back in the call or that Zoom. There you go. Okay. See if that works for her. But yeah, talk to some surveyors. Again, we have surveyors on the team that we can call and find out when they can get to it. So you need to find that out before you put a random day in there. Next is closing. The best thing to do is to put a specific date and time of closing. 21st of February, 2020, whatever, 21st of May, whatever the case may be. But again, when you're working with your lender, you want to work with the lender that can meet that date. But like we said earlier, that's a soft date. It doesn't say time is of the essence. Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Yay!
I don't know what happened.
I don't know.
My computer battery was going low, but
Okay, so yeah, put a specific date, for the closing if you can. But make sure you work with a lender that can meet that date. So if the date you put in there comes and you don't close, the contract's not dead. It's not voidable. It's a soft date. You're working toward closing. You're allowed a reasonable extension of time past that date. What's a reasonable extension of time? If it's a 30-day close, somewhere between 7 and 10 days. It's not written in law anywhere. It's just in case law. But again, you're granted a reasonable extension of time. Now, sometimes you have to put, if it's a vacant property, the reason you want to put a specific date is because you want the sellers to know when they have to be out. If you put a date range in there, you know, the buyer wants to close as soon as they can, but the seller could mean, let's say over here, you put 30 to 45 days. The buyer sees 30, hey, I can be in the house within 30 days. The seller sees 45 over here. They say, oh, wow, I've got 45 days before I have to move out. Well, if you do that, then yes, they do have 45 days to move out, because if they cannot mutually agree upon a closing date and time, closing shall occur on the last business day of the time frame, which means 43 if it's a close on the 43rd day, if the 45th day is on Sunday, or the 45th day is a business day, then it's closing on the 45th day. So again, if you can put a specific date, if it's vacant, it's usually not a big deal. You can put a date range here. If it's a contingent contract, you're writing a contingent offer, which means they can't do anything until their house sells or goes under contract. You have to put a date range here. So I would put a fairly narrow date range, 30 to maybe 35 days or something like that. And then next is date of possession. You want to always try for simultaneous possession, because you want to be able to do a final walkthrough and make sure that the house is in the condition that it's supposed to be in. Can you guys see this? This is a house that we had, this was a 3-day delayed possession. They were supposed to have the house in broom clean condition when they moved out. This is what we walked into. It's what the buyer walked into. Do you think the buyer was happy when they got there? No. So we didn't have a delayed possession agreement. So my agent on my team and I, we split $800 to hire a junk guy to go out there and clean all this stuff up. So we're not going to make the buyer pay for it, because we want to get referrals. So we ate the $800, which that's another, you keep eating enough money, it adds up pretty quickly. So in that case, we ate it. But what we should have done, what my agent should have done, is a delayed possession agreement. In a house like that has a lot of garbage in it, you would escrow funds with the closing attorney until possession. Let's say, in this case, say $1,000. At Borders and Borders, we would have Harry escrow $1,000 to be held in their escrow account until possession. That way, when our buyers got there and they saw all that crap, we could have called our junk guy and had him go over there. Then Harry would have cut him a check for the $800, and we would not have been out $800 ourselves. So that's why you always want to ask for simultaneous possession. Okay. If you ask for simultaneous possession, all your keys will be given at the closing table. You'll do a final walkthrough prior to closing, and everybody is happy. That's what you want to shoot for. But sometimes it doesn't happen. So you're going to get a delayed possession agreement. The condition of the paragraph 14, the condition of the property, it's supposed to be in broom clean condition, in the same or better condition as of the date of acceptance of the contract. They shall leave the property free of cash and debris. Trash. Cash is fine. Trash is not fine. Free of trash and debris, and shall leave the premises broom clean. Personal property not designated in this contract must be removed by the seller prior to possession. Again, damage beyond normal wear and tear caused by the removal of personal property shall be repaired by the seller prior to possession. And again, it says this paragraph shall survive closing. When something says it shall survive closing, that doesn't mean it just automatically get fixed. It means it's enforceable. But in order to enforce it, you have to use some type of legal method to enforce it, which costs money. So what you do is you do a final walkthrough prior to closing. If the repairs are not done properly, because you want to ask for your receipts 3 days prior to closing so you can see that everything was done. And then you do the final walkthrough to make sure all the garbage is out and it's broom clean. And if you do the final walkthrough and something's not right, don't go to the closing table. You don't close until it is right. You may have to push closing a day or two, because if you close it hoping that it gets fixed, in most cases it doesn't get fixed, and then you're looking at some type of legal remedy to get it fixed. So everybody wants to get paid right away. They want the closing to happen so they get paid. But I'm telling you, if it's not right, then don't close, because once you close, it makes it virtually impossible to enforce without costing money. Does that make sense? Paragraph 16, if this is a investment property, the leases transfer with the property. So if there are leases in effect, then that lease transfers to your new buyer along with partial months rent, any deposits, security deposits, anything like that transfers with the property. So if you're buying a house with a tenant, your buyer can't move in. They bought themselves a rental property until the lease is up. Okay, paragraph 17 talks about warranties. If there is a fee involved, the big warranty is the basement waterproofing warranty, which we saw when we looked at our example of one earlier. It said Aqualock warranty or whatever. Again, in Louisville, the big one, Brandy, do you guys have basements in Colorado? You do? We have a lot of leaky basements in Louisville. And so there's a lot of basement waterproofing done. If there's a fee involved for transferring the warranty to the buyer is responsible for paying that fee. So you want to find out about that early on in the process, so there's no surprise at the day before closing. Next, paragraph 18 talks about the title. Typically, you're going to get a general warranty deed, which is the strongest type of deed you can get. But you're going to always have your buyers, or encourage your buyers, to buy owner's title insurance. When you have a mortgage, the bank will make you buy, the lender will make you buy title insurance to cover their portion of the loan, but the owner's portion is separate. It's optional. If you close at Borders or Pitt and Frank or Madeline Ford or Moser, any of those guys, they're going to put owner's title insurance automatically on there, which they should do. Unless the only time they're not going to do it is if line 244 is checked, which is where it says buyer declines the protection of owner's title insurance. Just let your buyers know they're going to do a title search, which may go back 30 years, 40 years, but things have come up on titles that the title search didn't cover. And if they don't have owner's title insurance, they're going to have to pay to defend their title, and that can be very expensive. When you sell a foreclosure, you're not going to get a general warranty deed. You're probably going to get a special warranty deed, okay? Because the foreclosure is the only type of deed. A special warranty deed only covers the period of time when the seller has owned the property, whether that's 6 months or a year, however long the foreclosure process was. So you want, again, in that case, you have to get owner's title insurance. I'll just recommend it and make sure that they understand how important it is. I can give you lots of horror stories about owner's title insurance, but it's a big thing. Smoke detector ordinance. In Jefferson County, there is a smoke detector ordinance, which means every time a house sells, if it has battery powered smoke detectors, they have to put in new smoke detectors with 10-year lithium batteries every time a house sells, even if it just sold 6 months before or 3 months before. Now, sometimes they're hardwired. I sold a condo I closed on a week ago, and the home inspector didn't verify what type of smoke detectors were in there. So the day of closing, I went and bought 4 smoke detectors, not knowing if they were hardwired or not. I should have found out about it early on, but I don't always do what I say to do. Sometimes I don't do what I tell you guys to do. So I took my ladder over there, went upstairs and took down the smoke detector, and sure enough, it was hardwired. So we were fine. But if they're not hardwired, then you have to replace them. This only applies to Jefferson County. It's a good idea for all counties, but the ordinance is only in Jefferson County that I know of. I think Lexington may have it as well, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't really sell much down there. Condo seller certificate. When you sell a condo, a condo seller certificate is required to be filled out by the association prior to closing, and that's required to be paid for by the seller. Again, many of the management companies charge $250 to have these things completed. So if you have a seller, let your sellers know they're required to pay for it. But the seller is not required to pay for any additional documents. Many lenders require separate documentation on condos. If the lender requires something more than the certificate, that is going to be paid for by your buyer. Okay. I put a copy of the condo seller certificate in here. It asks for all the regulations, all the financials, all the information about the condo association to make sure that this place is healthy financially. There's not any assessments that are due and payable and so forth. So you should get that and read through that and make sure it's acceptable to your buyer. Risk of loss, paragraph 21. This means they need to have homeowners insurance in place. If there's a lender involved, they're going to make sure you have insurance in place before they close. If it's a cash transaction, they're not, because there's no lender. So it's up to you to make sure your buyer has homeowners insurance in place before closing. So I had a cash transaction with this lady, and we were sitting at the closing table, and I said, Donna, did you get your homeowners insurance set up on the new place? And she goes, oh my gosh, I forgot all about it. I said, whoa. So we stopped the closing. She went out in the lobby of Borders and Borders and called her insurance guy and got insurance in place before she signed the deed. Thank God I remembered to tell her that. I mean, if she closed and signed that deed and got home and that place had burned down, she would have been out $200,000 in cash. That would not be cool. Paragraph 22 just talks about the additional disclosures that are required: fair housing, consumer's guide, agency disclosure. Commission is paid by the seller. That's what paragraph 23 says. Again, it's earned upon acceptance. So sometimes you earn your commission even if something doesn't close. So that we're going through a situation like that right now with one of our buyers that did not close. They breached the contract, did not close. So the listing agent is going after our agent for the commission. So it's not fun. So make sure your buyers in this situation, the agent was at fault, not the buyer. The agent missed the inspection deadline and didn't terminate. With the buyer told them they wanted to terminate, and she knew about it on day 8, but didn't send over the termination until day 11, which was outside of the inspection timeline, which meant she breached the contract. So they're going after her for the commission, which is not fun. You didn't even make any money on the sale, and now you got to pay $5,000 in commission. So watch those deadlines. Paragraph 24 talks about notices. Again, all this means that it must be in writing. Must be in writing, delivered by email, first class mail, hand delivery, fax, blah, blah, blah. texts are not currently considered a legal form of delivery in Kentucky. Severability. If you sever one paragraph from this contract, all the other paragraphs are still in place. So if you take one paragraph out, the other ones are still binding. Paragraph 26 talks about mediation and binding arbitration. We try to work things out through mediation or binding arbitration before we go to court. Because if you go to court, you have to hire lawyers, and lawyers cost money and courts cost money, and it's crazy. It's mediation or binding arbitration is quicker and cheaper. It's still not free by any means, but it's cheaper than going to court. So that's another place. See right here, that's another place that you're going to sign. That's the only, this and the lead paint disclosure is the only place that I can remember right now that where you actually sign on the contract. The contract is a bilateral agreement between the buyer and the seller. You are not a party to this contract other than earning your commission. 27, it talks about amendments. They must be modified by means like either handwritten or electronic, blah, blah, blah. That's not a big deal. Just make sure you use a system such as Authentisign, DocuSign, .loop, or whatever the case, whatever system you use. Okay, other provisions. Paragraph 28 is where you get to write in anything that's not already in here. Okay, what I've written in here now is title and closing to be performed by Borders and Borders attorneys. We write that in all of our offers because we want to close with Borders and Borders. So that's what we put in all of our offers. I've got other possible stuff. This is the next page. But before we get, I'll jump to the next page. Here's some other, and it says paragraph 27 because last year paragraph 28 was paragraph 27. Now it's paragraph 28. I just haven't changed that. I will change that. Verbiage commonly goes in paragraph 28. Closing costs. If you're asking the seller to pay part of the buyer's closing cost, that's where you would write that in paragraph 28. If the buyer's property, if it's contingent on closing of the buyer's property, then you would write in this contract is contingent upon the closing of buyer's property located at 123 Main Street, Dallas, Texas, which is under contract and scheduled to close on or around blah, blah, blah. Another possible thing for 28. Another one, escalation clauses. We're doing a lot of multiple offer situations. This is an example of an escalation clause, meaning your buyer agrees to pay $500 to $1,000 more than the next highest offer up to a maximum amount that they're willing to pay for the property. This is the verbiage you would use for that. If you are buying the house or selling the house, you must put in there that you are a licensed agent in the state of Kentucky. Sorry, Lisa Miller's needing me. This is all you do is put blank, your name is a buyer, seller, investor in this transaction. Okay, if you're writing a backup offer, there's a lot of, in our MLS, there are statuses. One of those statuses right here is active under contract. What that means is the house has a pending contract in place, but they're continuing to show it to try to elicit backup offers. Okay, so you could potentially show one of these houses that's active under contract, and you would want to put a backup offer in there. Well, you want to make sure and use all this language for that backup offer, because if you don't, a backup offer you want to always give your buyer the opportunity to look for other properties, because 80% of the deals actually close. Probably about 20% of them fall apart. So you've got the backup offer only has about a 20% chance of actually working. But you want to give your buyer the right to look at other houses until this one closes, because they may get an accepted backup offer, and then their dream house comes on the market the next day. Well, if you don't use the right language in here, that backup offer stays in place until the primary offer closes. So you have to be very careful. So just, and this language is in .loop. It's in under clauses in .loop and under clauses in transaction desk. So it's available, but you have it right here. Just make sure to use that. A backup offer does require a good faith check. So just because it's a backup offer, you still have to give the $1,000 or whatever good faith check to the listing agent. Okay. And then there's other things that could go in here. Again, anything that's not written in the actual contract, you would put it in paragraph 28. Any questions about that? Nope. Paragraph 29, these are other addendums that you may or may add to the contract. We talked about the HOA addendum, adding that to the contract. If you're doing a contingent offer, there's a whole other form. All contingencies are not created equal. You've got the contingency that I just showed you, contingent on the close of the buyer's property. That means the house in Dallas is already under contract. If the house in Dallas was either not listed or didn't have a contract in place, you would have to use an entire new form called the contingency of sale and closing form. And that's where you would check that you're going to use that form. Delayed possession agreement, if you prepare one of these, that check there. And there's a document for substantially completed new construction. That's very rarely used, but if you have a house that's not quite finished, where maybe the kitchen's not put in yet, you want to make sure that your buyer is protected and gets the right type of finishes that they ask for. Again, 329, there's no rescission period following the signing of this contract. Now you can rescind the contract prior to acceptance. So let's say you write an offer right now at 3:32 and you give them till noon tomorrow to respond. Anytime prior to them responding, you can say, whoa, we're rescinding this offer. Okay, does that make sense? You can rescind it up until the time it's either counteroffered or accepted. If it's accepted, they're under contract. They can't rescind it. If they send over a counteroffer, then they can say, nope, we're not going to buy it. So, but they can rescind it up to acceptance. The survival clause, that just talks about that all those all the provisions in there that survive closing. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. It just means they're enforceable. It's enforceable after closing. But when I say enforceable, that means it takes some type of legal action to enforce. In your package 2, the last page of your package 2 explains that survival language, and you guys can read that on your own. Okay, the last page is where you give them until blank PM on 16th day of January 2020. This is how much time you're giving the seller to respond to your offer. Your buyer signs it right here, dates and times it right here. And what you're praying for is this box to be checked right here. Accepted. Yay, you have an accepted contract. Then you just move on to your home inspections and all your other things. That's what you're hoping for. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you get a rejection. So the seller, your buyer's offer is rejected. However, the seller will accept, say, $210,000, whatever the case may be. And the seller will accept $210,000. And that's what they write in here. That's it. That's the only thing they write in here. Well, notice, what's this say down here? All other terms and conditions shall remain the same. So the only thing the seller changed in the counteroffer was the price. Everything else on all 6 pages before this one remain the same. The home warranty, if you ask for that, any closing costs, if you ask for that, all that stuff is staying in place because that's what it says. All other terms and conditions shall remain the same. In order for it to change, they must change it down here. Does that make sense? All right. And then again, you hope for an acceptance so you can move on to inspections and then hopefully to closing. But many times it goes to another counteroffer, in which case you have to create a page 8. And you put in all the language about for contract dated, blah, 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 for property located at 123 Main Street, whatever the case may be. And you just keep going back and forth. I mean, I've seen them go out like to page 10 or page 11s in some cases. You know, it's kind of crazy, but I mean, sometimes I've seen that happen. So again, but everything, you've got to be careful when you go out to like page 8 or page 9, because it gets confusing what all was changed. So sometimes if you change a lot of stuff and it's confusing, once you agree to everything, sometimes it's better just to summarize everything in a brand new contract, okay? Because the lenders can get really confused if they see all these changes on all these pages. So again, if that happens, just talk to me and we'll go over it. We talked about the bill of sale early on. If you want to buy, if you want the seller to leave the lawnmower, the tractor, the whatever the case may be, this is the bill of sale. And you write in the pertinent information here. The grantor is the seller. The grantee is the buyer, and they agree to pay $1 for blah, blah, blah. This, the reason this is really this is a legal document. We're not licensed to write legal documents, but we're licensed to have legal documents filled out that were approved by attorneys. So we were doing what was called personal property addendums, agreements, and a litigation attorney told me one time, you know, every time you guys do one of these personal property agreements, you're practicing law without a license. And I say, well, that's not very good, because we're not allowed to do that. So Harry Borders prepared this bill of sale and gave us permission to use it. So that's what that's for. So you can use this without practicing law. But again, do not attach this to the contract, because you don't want the lender to see this, because lenders will loan on real property, but they will not loan. Mortgages do not count for personal property. This is a copy of the condo seller certificate that I told you about earlier, and it's going to provide all of these things, which condos are so different than houses. And your buyers really need to know all this information before they purchase the condo. Okay. And the operating budget, balance sheets, insurance summary, rules and bylaws, declarations, blah, blah, blah. Here is an example of the homeowners association documents request. Again, if your guy's a plumber, he wants to park his plumbing truck, you need to know that. So you're asking them to provide all of those documents along with the contacts for the HOA, if there's any fee for the HOA, if there's any assessments on the HOA. There's a lot of these HOAs that have assessments, and buyers try to sell their houses and don't disclose that there's an assessment due. We had a $5,000 assessment with a buyer found out about that a seller didn't disclose, and the buyer didn't get one of these filled out. The buyer's agent didn't ask to get one of these filled out, and there was a $5,000 assessment due, and the sellers moved to California. So the buyers were stuck with a $5,000 assessment. Think they were happy? Nope, not so much. So again, you guys need to protect your people by using the documents that are available to be used. Again, if you don't understand this the first time you do it, it's pretty self-explanatory, but I usually ask for this to be done within 3 days and then give my buyer 1 day to review it. Okay. If you have any questions about it, call me or come see me. If the office ever reopens, you can actually come see me via not Zoom. You still come see me. People come see me in my house all the time. Right, Becky? Contingency of sale and closing of buyer's property. This is the document you would use if your buyers say, yeah, I'd like to buy this house, but I can't buy it until I sell my house or get a contract on my house. So this is the document that you must use in order to do that. And you fill out all this stuff upstairs with the property information. You put how long this contingency is good for. Usually 90 days is pretty common. 60 to 90 days right here. If buyer is not released the contingency of sale and buyer's contract, property is not listed for sale within blank days. Typically, a seller will not allow will not accept a contingency if the house is not going to be listed within a week. Okay, so this is how long you have to get their house listed. And it can't be for sale by owner. It must be listed on the MLS. It does not allow for sale by owners. If you get the house under contingency, the listing agent should put in the agent notes there is a 24-hour contingency, there is a contingent contract in place with a 24-hour or 48-hour first right of refusal. That's why you need to read the agent notes, because if you don't read the agent notes, you may not know that your buyer may have to wait 48 hours before they get an answer from the seller, because that's where it goes. It goes in the agent notes. And in this box right here, you're either going to put 24 or 48 hours. If you represent the buyer, you put 48 because you want them to have as much time as possible. But many sellers will counter with 24. So if you do a contingency and you get a notice from the seller that another contract has been accepted, you at that point, that's your countdown. Your 24 hours or 48 hours starts here, and then you either have a contract accepted to sell your property, which contract shall not be contingent on the sale of any other property, or provide proof that you can buy this house having not sold your house. Many people are financially qualified to do what's called a bridge loan. They have enough equity in their house, they can buy house number 2 having not sold house number 1. But if they can do that, you want them to make sure that they get that proof before they list their house. Because if they want to buy this house having not sold their house, they must provide that proof within this time frame right here, that 24 hours. If they don't, then the seller can accept offer number 2. We have a guy, Tommy Thomas, that we use for all of our bridge loans. He's fantastic. But if your buyer's potentially going to do that, they need to do that early on, because if this comes in on a weekend, you may not have the time to get that approval from the lender within the time frame. Nextly here, all deadlines set forth in paragraph 10 of this contract shall be calculated as follows. Paragraph 10, if you remember, is the inspection paragraph. So what are you going to put here? You've got 2 options. You can do your inspections right now when the contingency goes into effect, or you can wait until you release the contingency to do inspections. Say that they have a contract on their house to sell their house, so they've released this contingency and they're going to do their inspections now. Well, what are the risks involved there? Many risks. Their current house is under contract, which means they can't change their mind about selling it. It's a binding contract. They do the inspection on what they thought was their dream house, and it requires $35,000 of foundation repairs. Do you think it's still their dream house if the seller's not willing to do those repairs? Probably not. So my recommendation is to do your inspections on check line 36. Do your inspections when the contingency goes into place. That way, if the dream house turns into a nightmare house, they can take their house off of the market if they so choose to do that. That's the way to protect them from that. The next option, all other 30 paragraphs, you're going to check line 40 here, will go into effect from the date of the release of the contingency of sale. Okay. On line, this is a new one. If buyer releases the contingency of sale pursuant to paragraphs in lines 25 through 30 above, right here, if despite the good faith efforts of the buyer to close on buyer's property, the closing does not occur within blank days of the closing date set forth in the attached contract. So if you put a 30 to 35 day window in your closing paragraph up in the original contract, this is how many days you're allowed to go past that closing window to give your buyer a cushion if for some reason the lender's not ready. Typically 10 days is what I recommend to put in there, because that's typically how long the extension was going to go by naturally if it weren't in there. Does that make sense? Again, the first time, if you guys do a contingent contract, the first one you do, come see me, call me or something, because you want to make sure you get this right. We had an attorney teach a class on this form in our office a few years ago. It took him an hour and a half to teach this class on just how to properly fill out this form. So again, come see me or something like that. Okay, we're getting close here. This is the form that the seller should send to you. If you have a contingent contract in place, this is the form that the seller should send to you, letting you know that they've accepted another offer, which means your 24 or 48-hour deadline starts. You either have to have their house under contract or be able to secure financing and prove that you secured financing in order to release this contingency and proceed toward the closing of the house. Does that make sense? You guys, this is a lot to absorb. I understand, and it just takes time. The worst form in our board. This is the form that must be signed. I wish people would know that I'm teaching. My own team should know that I'm teaching. Right, Becky? Becky knows because she's on the call. Brandy knows because she's on the call. Anyway, this is the form if your buyer terminates the deal. You put the information up here, earnest money deposit of $1,000 held by Keller Williams Louisville East shall be returned to the buyer. And this has to be signed by both sellers and both buyers if there's more than one, and both the listing broker and the selling broker. I can't release the good faith funds to either party until all of these things are signed. It's against the law. The only way I can release it is by court order or issuing a 60-day letter. It's the only way they can be released. This is a copy of the delayed possession agreement. Okay. We're not going to go over this a whole lot. What I like to do on my delayed possession agreements is let the other side know we're giving you a week to stay in your house. We wanted simultaneous possession. Delayed possessions are very dangerous for a buyer. You saw those pictures I showed you. So what I like to do is have Borders and Borders prepare this document to be signed at closing. If an attorney prepares it and has somebody sign it, it carries a lot more weight than if a real estate agent has it signed. Does that make sense? Borders will do that for you if you use Borders and Borders. And I've had delayed possession agreements where the sellers didn't get out when they said they were going to get out. They were like they wouldn't leave the house even though the buyer already owned the house. So in that case, that you have to charge a holdover fee like $250 per day or whatever if the sellers don't get possession when they say they're going to. So read through this, and again, I like to have it prepared at closing. And then here's an example of the inspection recommendation forms that we like to recommend. Next is a copy of a home inspection. You're supposed to give your buyers a choice of minimum of 3 home inspectors. You're not supposed to select the home inspector for them, although we do all the time. And then lastly is a copy of a real home inspection, a real repair request. This was a house that I sold back in 2015. This is an actual repair request that I performed or prepared. Notice that it's pretty clear exactly what I wanted repaired. And I broke it down into handyman issues, which you don't need a licensed contractor to replace the fascia trim on the side of a house. A handyman can do that. Sealing the area between home and the driveway does not require a foundation repair company. Gutter replacers are not licensed contractors. Plumbing issues. Here, this is a licensed trade. Plumbing issues. Have repaired by licensed plumber with receipts provided prior to closing. I used to say prior to closing, now I say 3 days prior to closing. Okay, and then I showed them pictures of exactly what I wanted fixed. And then HVAC issues. Okay, and I had her listed as a third-party beneficiary to the HVAC repairs. Again, pictures spelling out exactly what we wanted done. And we got this repair, we got this accepted, and we moved on, and she bought the house. But again, if I'd have just listed all those things on separate lines without any pictures, it may have scared the seller to death, and they may have said, forget this, we're not doing anything. And that happens all the time. Or if I would have just sent over the entire inspection report and said, fix everything on the summary, again, that happens all the time too, and that's just being a lazy agent. Spend the time, put together a nice one, and you will terminate a lot fewer transactions. This took me probably an hour to put together, maybe longer, I don't know. Try not to use the exact words that the home inspector uses, because many times they will use the words have further evaluated. You don't want to use those words. If something needs further evaluation, it's your job to get that. It's your buyer's job to get them further evaluation, get them further evaluated. If the basement leaks, you don't want to have them hire the basement company to come out and say the basement's fine, because they may do that. You want to have your own basement person go out and say, hey, the basement's fine, or it needs $1,000 worth of work, or it needs $35,000 worth of work. Again, it's your responsibility to get all of the buyer's inspections done. So try to get your inspections scheduled early in the 10 days, as early as possible. So if something else needs checking out, you'll have time to get somebody else out there within that 10-day inspection period.